Elara's rag scraped against the marble floor as she worked her way across the grand ballroom. The crystal chandelier threw hard light down on her. Her knees ached from 3 hours of scrubbing. Her back burned between her shoulder blades. 100 princesses would walk these floors tomorrow, each one hoping to become queen. She dunked the rag in soapy water and attacked a stubborn wine stain near the raised dais. The Alpha King's throne waited there, carved from black oak and lined with midnight velvet. The thought of all those beautiful women in silk gowns made her stomach clench. Not jealousy. She knew better than that, something else. Something she couldn't name. The ballroom doors opened with a whisper of sound. Footsteps followed. Too heavy for servants' shoes. Too measured for someone in a hurry. Elara's heart stuttered. She scrambled to her feet, bucket sloshing. Water splashed over the rim. She spun around too fast. The collision knocked the breath from her lungs. Strong hands caught her arms before she could fall. Soapy water drenched expensive leather boots. She looked up into the darkest eyes she'd ever seen. Alpha King Darius. Her throat closed. Words died before they could form. Something electric passed between them. A pull so strong it made her dizzy. His grip tightened on her arms. His nostrils flared like he was scenting her. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. The air crackled between them. Dangerous, impossible. Reality crashed back. Elara jerked away from his touch. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." She dropped into a clumsy curtsy. "I didn't see you. I'll clean your boots immediately. What's your name?" His voice was rougher than she'd expected. Lower. She kept her eyes fixed on the wet marble between them. "Elara, Your Majesty." "Look at me, Elara." The command in his tone made her obey before she could think. Those dark eyes searched her face like he was memorizing every detail. Her skin tingled under his scrutiny. Heat crawled up her neck. "Have we met before?" "No, Your Majesty. I work in the kitchens mostly." The words came out breathless. Something flickered across his expression. "Disappointment?" He released her arms and stepped back. His gaze never left her face. "The ballroom looks perfect," he said. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He turned toward the door, paused, looked back over his shoulder. "Elara." "Yes?" "Be careful tomorrow." "With so many guests." His jaw tightened. "The castle won't be as safe as usual." Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone. The doors closed with a soft thud behind him. Elara stood alone with her racing heart and the bucket of cooling water. The air still felt charged where he'd been standing. Her arms tingled where his hands had gripped her. Something had changed. She could feel it in her bones. The ballroom blazed with candlelight from 1,000 flames. Elara pressed herself against the stone wall, silver tray balanced in her hands. Music drifted from the string quartet in the corner. Silk rustled as the princesses moved in their perfect formations. Princess Isabella glided forward first, her golden hair catching the light like spun sunshine. Princess Celeste followed in midnight blue silk that pooled around her feet like water. Princess Vivienne's emerald gown matched her calculating eyes. Each woman was breathtaking, each one born to wear a crown. Alpha King Darius sat motionless on his throne, but tension radiated from him in waves Elara could feel across the vast room. His hands gripped the carved armrests. White knuckles, set jaw. He looked like a man enduring torture rather than choosing a bride. "Isn't he magnificent?" Sarah whispered beside her. Another servant, barely 16 and still caught up in fairy tales. "I'd die happy just to dance with him once." Elara said nothing. She couldn't stop remembering the electric moment when he'd caught her. The way her whole body had come alive under his touch, like she'd been struck by lightning. Princess Morgana stepped forward to present herself. Her silver dress trailed behind her like liquid moonlight. She was breathtaking. Flawless. Any man would count himself blessed to call her wife. But Darius wasn't looking at her. His dark eyes cut through the crowd. Scanning. Searching. Elara's breath caught as his gaze found hers across the ballroom. Even with dozens of the world's most beautiful women before him, he was looking at her. The intensity in his stare made her knees weak, made her grip the silver tray until her knuckles went white. She forced herself to look away, but she could still feel the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Heat bloomed in her chest, traveled down her spine. This was madness. "The refreshments need refilling," she whispered to Sarah. A lie, but she needed air. Space. Distance from those burning eyes. The corridor outside felt cool against her flushed skin. Elara leaned against the stone wall and tried to catch her breath. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. This was impossible. The Alpha King had 100 princesses to choose from. Royal blood. Political connections. Women who could strengthen his kingdom and bear him worthy heirs. She was nobody. Less than nobody. But when she closed her eyes, she could still feel those strong hands on her arms. Pathetic. Elara spun around. Princess Vivienne stood in the doorway, having slipped away from the ceremony. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Porcelain skin. Perfect features. But her green eyes held a coldness that made Elara's skin crawl. "Your Highness." Elara dropped into a curtsy. "Do you think I'm blind?" Vivienne stepped closer. Her voice stayed pleasant, conversational. But something sharp lurked beneath the silk. "I saw how he looked at you in there. How you looked back." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me." Vivienne's smile was razor thin. "I've been watching Darius for years, waiting for the right moment, planning. I won't let some grubby little maid ruin everything I've worked for." Fear crawled up Elara's spine on spider legs. "Your Highness, I would never." "No, you wouldn't. Because if I see you anywhere near the king again." Vivienne's fingernails traced along Elara's cheek, sharp as claws. "If I catch him looking at you the way he did tonight, I'll make sure you disappear. Permanently." Elara's throat felt like sandpaper. "Yes, Your Highness." "Good girl." Vivienne's smile turned sweet again. Deadly. "Now run along and remember your place." The princess glided back toward the ballroom, emerald silk whispering against stone. Elara sagged against the wall. Her cheek burned where those nails had touched. Vivienne was right. She'd seen the truth Elara had been trying to deny. Whatever was happening between her and the Alpha King was real, and it was going to get them both killed. 3 days into the competition, Elara had perfected the art of becoming invisible. She kept her eyes down during meals, finished her work quickly and quietly, avoided any corridor where the king might appear. It was working. Mostly. She could still feel his gaze seeking her out across the great hall during dinner service. But she never looked back, never gave him reason to approach. The ache in her chest grew stronger with each passing day, but she ignored it. "The princesses want fresh flowers for their chambers," Cook announced as Elara finished scrubbing the morning dishes. "You'll need to gather them from the east garden." Elara nodded and grabbed a wicker basket from the pantry. The east garden was far from the main castle where the competitions were held. She'd be safe there, hidden. The afternoon sun warmed her shoulders as she knelt among the roses. Red blooms heavy with fragrance. White jasmine climbing the stone walls. For the first time in days, the knot in her chest loosened slightly. Out here, she could almost forget about dark eyes and electric touches, almost pretend her world hadn't tilted sideways 3 nights ago. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. Multiple sets. Walking fast with purpose. There she is. Elara's blood turned to ice water. She recognized the voice, Princess Morgana. She turned slowly, still kneeling among the roses. 3 princesses approached across the garden path, their beautiful faces twisted with something ugly, something dangerous. "Your Highness." Elara climbed to her feet carefully, basket clutched in her hands. "I was just gathering flowers for—" "We know what you were doing," Princess Celeste spat. Her midnight blue gown looked almost black in the dappled sunlight. "Seducing our king." "That's not. He barely glances at us anymore." Princess Morgana stepped closer. Her silver dress rustled like snake scales. "But we've seen how he watches you, how he asks the servants about you when he thinks no one's listening." Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. "I've done nothing wrong." "You exist," said the third princess, Lady Helena from the Northern Kingdoms. "That's wrong enough." They moved to surround her in a loose triangle. Elara backed toward the garden wall, her mind racing. She could scream, but who would hear her out here? The east garden was isolated by design, private. "Please," she whispered, "I'll leave. I'll go to another kingdom, find work somewhere else. Just don't." Too late for that. Morgana's smile showed too many teeth. "He's already obsessed with you. The damage is done." The first blow caught Elara across the face, sharp knuckles against her cheekbone. Her head snapped back, stars exploding behind her eyelids. The basket flew from her hands, roses scattering across the gravel path. Princess Celeste grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked hard enough to bring tears to her eyes. "You think you're special," she hissed close to Elara's ear. "You think your common blood means anything to him?" A fist connected with Elara's stomach. All the air rushed out of her lungs in a whoosh. She doubled over, gasping, as sharp nails raked across her arms. Red lines welled up, stinging and hot. These women had been trained in combat along with dancing and languages. It showed. Through her pain and terror, Elara heard something that made her blood freeze in her veins. A low, rumbling growl that didn't sound entirely human. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. From the very air around them, the attacks stopped abruptly. The princesses stepped back, their faces pale with sudden fear. "What?" said a voice like controlled thunder. "Is happening here?" Alpha King Darius stood at the garden entrance. But this wasn't the composed ruler from the ballroom ceremonies. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. And his dark eyes now burned with golden fire. "Your Majesty," Princess Morgana stammered. All her earlier confidence had evaporated. I can smell her blood." His voice carried an edge that made the princesses flinch backward. "I can smell her fear. Tell me why." The scent of roses felt cloying now, thick and sweet and wrong. Elara touched her split lip with shaking fingers, tasted copper and salt. Princess Celeste lifted her chin in defiance. Last desperate attempt at control. "She's been throwing herself at you, trying to distract you from choosing a proper bride. We were protecting your honor." The growl that erupted from Darius's chest was pure wolf. His canine teeth had lengthened slightly. The gold in his eyes burned brighter than flame. "Get out!" 2 words, spoken quietly, but they carried the force of an avalanche. "Your Majesty, get out!" The roar echoed off the garden walls. Birds exploded from the trees in a rush of wings. The princesses fled, their silk skirts rustling as they ran back toward the castle. Darius was beside Elara in 3 quick strides. His hands hovered over her injuries like he was afraid to touch her. The gold was fading from his eyes, but she could still see his wolf just beneath the surface. Barely controlled. "Are you hurt badly?" His voice shook with barely leashed rage. Elara tried to speak but only managed to sob. The terror was catching up with her, now that the immediate danger had passed. Blood trickled from her split lip. The scratches on her arms burned like brands. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he said. Before she could protest, he lifted her into his arms. Being held against his chest, feeling his strength surrounding her, finally broke the dam. Elara buried her face against his shoulder and let the tears come. Great, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. His arms tightened around her protectively. She heard him whisper something in the old language. It sounded like a promise, or a threat. Darius carried her through corridors she'd never seen before, away from the main castle, where servants might gossip and princesses might follow. These halls were older, quieter, lined with portraits of long-dead kings and queens. He shouldered open a heavy oak door. The room beyond was clearly private, All dark wood and leather chairs, with a fire crackling in the stone hearth. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A king's private study. He set her down gently on a burgundy sofa, then disappeared through another door. Elara heard water running and tried to process what had just happened. The king's eyes had turned gold, actually gold, like living flame, and that growl, no human throat could make that sound. He returned with a porcelain basin of warm water and clean white cloths, knelt beside the sofa without a word. His hands were steady now as he dabbed at the scratches on her arms, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw still clenched. "Your Majesty, I should go," she whispered. "If someone finds us here, let them find us." His voice was rough gravel. "I'm tired of pretending I don't see you." Her breath caught. He continued cleaning her wounds with gentle precision. The silence stretched between them until she couldn't bear it anymore. "What you did back there," she said quietly. "Your eyes." His hand stilled on her arm. "You're not afraid? She should be terrified." Everything about this situation screamed danger. But looking at him now, seeing the careful way he tended her injuries, "I felt safe," she admitted. "For the first time since this competition started." Something shifted in his expression. He set aside the cloth and sat back on his heels. "You want to know why I lost control?" She nodded. "Because when I heard your cry, when I smelled your blood on the air," his hands clenched into fists, "something in me snapped. The thought of anyone hurting you made me want to tear them apart with my bare hands." "That's not normal, Elara. Kings don't lose their minds over servant girls." "Then why?" "Because you matter to me." The words came out like a confession pulled from his chest. "More than any of those 100 princesses with their perfect bloodlines and political advantages. When I'm with you, the noise in my head goes quiet. My wolf settles. You have no idea what that means." Elara's heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "I'm nobody. You're everything." His dark eyes held hers captive. "And that terrifies me as much as it terrifies you." She wanted to reach for him, to close the distance between them and let herself fall into whatever this was. But reality was a cold weight in her chest. "This can't happen," she whispered. "You have to choose a princess. Your kingdom needs... My kingdom needs a queen I can actually stand to be in the same room with." Bitterness crept into his voice. "Do you know what it's like to sit through dinner after dinner, listening to them talk about bloodlines and alliances, while all I can think about is whether you've eaten, whether you're safe?" Darius. His name slipped out without the title, and his eyes darkened. "Say it again." "I can't. You're the king. You're the woman I dream about." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The one I look for in every room I enter. The only person in this entire castle who looks at me and sees just a man." Tears burned her eyes. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly. I understand that I've never felt this way about anyone. I understand that my wolf has chosen you, whether my crown approves or not." His hand covered hers on the sofa, warm and sure. "What I don't understand is why you're fighting this as hard as I am." "Because I know how this story ends," she whispered. "The king marries the princess. The servant girl disappears. That's how these things work." "Not this time." But even as he said it, she could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. The weight of his responsibilities. The impossible situation they'd created just by caring about each other. Over the following days, Darius found excuses to seek her out. He appeared in the kitchens during her shifts, claiming he needed to discuss menu changes with Cook. He lingered in hallways where she worked, asking meaningless questions about castle maintenance. Each stolen conversation made her feelings deeper and her fear sharper. "You're playing with fire," Martha warned one evening as they folded linens in the servants' hall. The older woman had been at the castle for 20 years. She saw everything. "Half the servants are already whispering about how the king watches you." Elara's hand stilled on a pillowcase. It's not what they think. Isn't it? Martha's voice was gentle but concerned. Child, I see how you light up when he's near, like someone lit a candle inside you. And the way he looks at you. She shook her graying head. That's not how a king looks at a servant. Heat flooded Elara's cheeks. He's just being kind. Kind men don't risk their throne for a few conversations. That night, Elara tried to avoid the routes where Darius might find her. She took the back stairs to the upper floors, carried supplies, through the older corridors. But as she hurried past an alcove with her arms full of fresh bedding, she heard her name called softly. You're avoiding me. He stepped out of the shadows, and her heart did that familiar leap against her ribs. I'm working. Elara. The way he said her name made her stop walking, made her turn despite every instinct screaming at her to run. Look at me. She turned reluctantly and saw hurt in his dark eyes. Real pain that made her chest ache. Did I do something wrong? He asked quietly. No. Yes, I don't know. She set down her supplies with shaking hands. This is wrong, what we're doing. You have 100 princesses waiting for your choice, and you're what? His voice was soft but insistent. Tell me what you are to me. The question hung between them like a challenge. She wanted to say she was nothing, nobody, just a servant who'd gotten caught up in something beyond her understanding, but the lies wouldn't come. I don't know, she whispered. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks scattered through his dark eyes. You're the first person I think about when I wake up. You're the reason I find excuses to walk through parts of my own castle I've never cared about before. You're the woman who makes me forget I'm supposed to be choosing a wife from the most eligible princesses in the known realm. Darius, stop. Why? Because it's inconvenient? Because it doesn't fit the plan everyone else has for my life? His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she leaned into the touch before she could stop herself. I'm tired of doing what everyone expects. For once in my life, I want to choose something for myself. And if you choose wrong, if you choose me and your kingdom suffers for it, what if I choose right? His thumb traced across her cheekbone, leaving fire in its wake. What if the woman I need isn't the one everyone thinks I should have? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor. They sprang apart just as another servant rounded the corner, young Tom from the stables. But Elara saw the knowing look in his wide eyes, the way he quickened his pace to get past them. Word would spread now. It always did. Princess Vivienne cornered her 2 days later in the castle's main corridor, during the busy afternoon hour when servants hurried between duties. Elara had been carrying fresh flowers to replace the wilted arrangements in the guest quarters when the princess stepped directly into her path. Other servants flowed around them like water around stones. But they kept their eyes averted, sensing predator and prey. We need to talk, Vivienne said. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. Elara clutched the flowers tighter, their stems cutting into her palms. Your Highness, I have duties. Your duties can wait. Vivienne glanced around at the bustling corridor, then gestured toward an empty chamber. Unless you prefer to have this conversation where everyone can hear. Heart sinking like a stone. In deep water, Elara followed the princess into the room. Vivienne closed the door with a soft click that sounded final. You've been busy, Vivienne said, beginning to circle her like a predator sizing up wounded prey. Late-night conversations, private meetings, the king seeking you out when he should be focused on his potential brides. I don't know what you mean. Don't insult my intelligence. Vivienne's voice remained pleasant, conversational. But her green eyes were winter cold. I have eyes, and so do half the people in this castle. The question is, what do you think you're accomplishing? Elara lifted her chin with more courage than she felt. I'm serving my king as I've been trained to do. Serving him. Vivienne laughed, and the sound made Elara's skin crawl. Like fingernails on stone. Is that what you call seducing him away from his responsibilities? Distracting him from choosing a proper queen? I would never. You already are. Vivienne moved closer, and Elara caught the scent of expensive perfume. roses, and something sharper underneath. But here's what you don't understand, little maid. Kings don't marry servants. They use them, they enjoy them for a while, and then they discard them when reality intrudes. And reality always intrudes. The words hit like physical blows, partly because they echoed Elara's own deepest fears. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Vivienne's smile turned predatory. Let me tell you exactly what's going to happen. Darius will continue to seek you out because you're convenient and available. Fresh. Different from the courtly women he's known all his life. He might even convince himself he cares about you. Elara's hands shook. The flower stems cut deeper into her palms. But when the time comes to actually choose, Vivienne continued, when his advisors remind him what's at stake, when neighboring kingdoms start making threats about dishonored alliances, he'll pick one of us. Because that's what kings do. They choose duty over desire, crown over heart. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm going to be his queen. Vivienne's mask slipped for just a moment, showing the calculating ambition underneath. And I don't want to start my reign by executing you for treason. The casual way she said it made Elara's blood freeze. Treason? Seducing the king. Interfering with royal marriage negotiations. There are laws about such things, you know. Very old laws with very permanent punishments. Vivienne examined her perfectly manicured nails. Stay away from him. Stop these little meetings. Go back to being invisible. And I might let you keep your pretty head when I'm crowned. And if I don't, then I'll make sure everyone knows about your midnight conversations and stolen touches. I'll paint you as a scheming seductress who manipulated their beloved king. The court will demand your punishment, and Darius won't be able to protect you without destroying his own reputation. Vivienne moved toward the door, then paused. You have until tomorrow night to decide. Choose wisely. But Elara's choice was made for her the next afternoon, when Vivienne's plan unfolded in the most public way possible. The royal court had gathered in the throne room for the weekly audience, where petitioners could bring their concerns before the king. Elara wasn't supposed to be there, but she'd been sent to deliver a message about kitchen supplies to one of the advisors. She was trying to slip out quietly along the wall when Vivienne's clear voice cut through the formal proceedings. Your Majesty, I must speak on a matter that affects us all. Darius looked up from the petition scroll he'd been reviewing. His dark eyes found Vivienne among the assembled princesses. Princess Vivienne, you may proceed. Vivienne stepped forward into the center of the room. Every inch the perfect princess in her silk gown and jeweled circlet. It concerns the integrity of this competition and the honor of your crown. A murmur went through the assembled courtiers like wind through wheat. Elara pressed herself against the cold stone wall near the servants' entrance, hoping to escape notice. But Vivienne's next words froze her in place. I've witnessed disturbing behavior from one of your servants, inappropriate conduct that threatens to compromise your ability to choose a bride fairly. The murmur grew louder. Heads turned, searching. Darius's expression didn't change, but Elara saw his hands tighten on the carved arms of his throne. That's a serious accusation, princess, he said carefully. You should be specific. The maid, Elara. Vivienne turned with theatrical precision, her gaze finding Elara across the crowded room like an arrow finding its target. She's been pursuing you inappropriately, seeking private meetings, attempting to seduce you away from your royal duties. The court erupted in shocked whispers and gasps. Elara felt the weight of dozens of stares, saw the mixture of scandal and disgust on noble faces. Her legs threatened to give out beneath her. Furthermore, Vivienne continued, her voice carrying clearly over the noise, she's been telling other servants that she has special influence with you, that she might even become queen herself. That's not true, Elara whispered, but her voice was lost in the crowd's reaction, the sound of her world ending. Darius rose from his throne slowly, deliberately. The room fell silent as if a blanket had been thrown over it. His face was a mask of royal composure, but Elara could see the storm building behind his eyes. These are serious allegations, he said in a voice that carried to every corner of the vast room. Servant. The formal address hit Elara like a physical blow. After days of stolen conversations and gentle touches, hearing him call her that felt like being gutted. She forced herself to walk forward on unsteady legs. past staring nobles and shocked advisors, past the princesses who watched her approach with expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction, until she stood in the center of the room with all eyes on her. A lamb brought for slaughter. Your Majesty? Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Princess Vivienne claims you have behaved inappropriately toward your king. How do you answer these charges? This was her moment. She could deny everything, claim innocence, throw herself on the mercy of the court, play the role of the innocent servant girl led astray, or she could tell the truth and destroy them both. She looked up at Darius, saw the desperate plea in his dark eyes, and knew what she had to do. I have served my king faithfully, she said, her voice growing stronger. I have never behaved inappropriately or sought position beyond my station. Relief flickered across Vivienne's beautiful face. The princess had won. Elara was playing by the rules, accepting her place. But then Darius spoke again, and his question wasn't in anyone's script. And have I behaved inappropriately toward you? The throne room went dead silent. Vivienne's eyes widened in shock. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Elara realized with growing horror that he was asking her to lie to protect him, to deny what they both knew was true. Your Majesty has always been... She searched desperately for words that wouldn't damn him. Kind. Kind. He repeated the word like he was tasting it, testing its weight. Princess Vivienne, you've accused my servant of pursuing me inappropriately. But what if it was the other way around? What if your king has been the one seeking out conversations, the one who finds comfort in her company? The court shock was a living thing now, pressing against Elara from all sides. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Vivienne's face had gone white as parchment. Your Majesty? One of his advisors said urgently, stepping forward from the crowd. Perhaps this discussion should be conducted in private. No. Darius's voice carried the absolute authority of his bloodline. Princess Vivienne made her accusations publicly. She'll hear my response the same way. He looked directly at Elara then, and she saw him make his choice in real time, saw the moment he decided to burn the world down for her. I reject this competition, he said, his words echoing in the stunned silence. I reject all 100 princesses and their bloodlines and their political advantages. The sound that rose from the court was like nothing Elara had ever heard. Gasps and cries and shouted protests, all blending together into chaos. Vivienne stumbled backward as if she'd been physically struck. Your Majesty? His chief advisor pleaded, his face pale with terror at the political ramifications. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. Darius's gaze never left Elara's face. My heart belongs elsewhere. It always has. And as the court erupted into chaos around them, as voices rose in anger and disbelief, as the foundations of kingdoms shifted, Elara felt her world collapse and rebuild itself in the space of a heartbeat. The chaos in the throne room was a living thing, pressing against Elara from all sides. Voices rose and fell like ocean waves, angry shouts from advisors, shocked cries from the princesses, the sound of political alliances crumbling in real time. But all she could hear was her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Darius had rejected them all. For her, the thought terrified her more than Vivienne's threats ever had. She backed toward the servants, entrance on unsteady legs. Her hands shook so badly, she had to clasp them together to hide it. This was a disaster, a political catastrophe that would ripple across continents. Wars had started over smaller insults than this, and it was all her fault. Elara, Darius's voice cut through the noise, but she was already running. She fled through the servants, corridors like a woman possessed, past startled kitchen maids and confused footmen. Word was already spreading. She could see it in their shocked faces, hear it in the whispers that followed her wake. The king had rejected 100 princesses for a maid. She burst into her tiny chamber and began throwing her few belongings into a canvas bag with shaking hands. A spare dress, her mother's worn prayer book, the small knife she used for mending. She had to leave. Tonight. This very moment. Before the full weight of what had happened came crashing down on everyone involved. Going somewhere? She spun around to find Mira in the doorway. Her friend's face was pale with worry, and something else. Fear. I have to leave, Elara said, shoving her spare stockings into the bag. Now, this very moment. Because the king declared his feelings for you in front of half the noble houses of the continent? Because I've destroyed everything. Elara's voice cracked like thin ice. Do you have any idea what I've done? The alliances I've ruined? The enemies I've made for him? Mira stepped into the room and closed the door softly behind her. I have an idea of what he chose to do. This wasn't your decision, Elara. It doesn't matter whose decision it was. I'm the one who'll pay for it. She grabbed her cloak from its wooden peg. And so will he, as long as I'm here. Where will you go? Elara paused, her cloak halfway to her shoulders. She hadn't thought that far ahead. Panic had driven her this far, but beyond the castle walls lay only uncertainty. South, maybe. Find work in another kingdom. Change my name. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. And live the rest of your life wondering what might have been? Better than living it knowing what I destroyed. She shouldered her bag and moved toward the door, but Mira blocked her path. He fought for you, her friend said quietly. In front of everyone who matters. In front of people who could destroy him for it. Don't you think that means something? It means he made a terrible mistake that I have to fix. Footsteps thundered. In the corridor outside, heavy boots moving fast, taking the stairs 2 at a time, Elara's heart jumped. She'd recognize that stride anywhere. Move, she whispered to Mira, but her friend shook her head. Face this, Elara. Face him. The footsteps stopped outside her door. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came a soft knock. Gentle, despite the urgency she'd heard in his approach. Elara? Darius's voice was rough, strained, like he'd been shouting. Please, I know you're in there. She pressed her back against the far wall, as if she could disappear into the stone itself. The canvas bag slipped from her shoulder to the floor with a soft thud. I'm coming in, he said quietly. She heard the door handle turn. He filled the doorway completely, still wearing his formal robes from the ceremony. But they were disheveled now, the golden circlet gone from his dark hair. His breathing was uneven, his eyes wild. Those eyes found hers immediately, and she saw the desperation there, the fear. Don't, he said simply. Your Majesty, Mira began, dropping into a quick curtsy. Leave us, Darius said without taking his gaze off Elara. Please. Mira looked between them for a moment, then squeezed Elara's hand briefly before slipping out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. They stood in silence in the tiny room. Her bed with its simple quilt, the single window that looked out over the kitchen gardens, the wash basin and cracked mirror that made up her entire world. It felt impossibly small with his presence filling it. You were going to run, he said. Not a question. I was going to fix what I broke. You didn't break anything. He took a step closer, and she pressed herself harder against the wall. I did. And I'd do it again. You don't understand what you've done. The consequences will be mine to handle. Another step. She could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes now, could smell his scent, something wild and woodsy that made her wolf stir restlessly. I'm the king, Elara. I knew exactly what I was choosing. You chose wrong. The words hung between them like a physical blow. His face went very still, very careful. Did I? He asked quietly. She couldn't answer. Because the truth was too big, too dangerous, too real to speak aloud. Look at me, he said. Really look at me and tell me I chose wrong." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she met his eyes. The intensity there nearly brought her to her knees. This was how he'd looked at her in the throne room, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Like he'd burn down kingdoms just to keep her safe. "I can't," she whispered. "Can't what?" "Can't look at you like that. Can't let you look at me like that." Her voice was breaking apart. "It's too much." He was close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Could see the pulse beating at his throat. "Too much what?" "Too much everything." The words came out in a rush. "I'm a maid, Darius. A servant. I cleaned floors and polish silver and sleep in a room the size of your closet. I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know how to navigate court politics or manage alliances or... I don't care. You have to care. You're a king. I'm also a man." His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she should have pulled away, but found herself leaning into the touch instead. Into the warmth and strength of him. "And my wolf has been going insane for weeks, telling me something I was too stubborn to listen to." Her breath caught in her throat. "What?" "You're my mate, Elara. My true mate." His thumb traced across her cheekbone, leaving trails of fire. "That pull you feel when you're near me? That's not attraction or infatuation or some servant's fantasy. That's the mating bond." The words hit her like a physical force. She'd heard stories, of course. Every shifter had. But true mates were rare. The stuff of legends and fairy tales. Not something that happened to girls like her. "That's impossible," she breathed. "Is it?" His other hand found her waist, steadying her when she swayed. "When did you first shift?" The question made her flinch. I never have." The admission came out small and ashamed. "I'm wolfless. Everyone knows that. Everyone's wrong." His voice was soft but certain. "You have a wolf, Elara. She's just been sleeping, waiting for her mate to call her forward." "You can't know that." "I can feel her." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "She's there, just under your skin, restless and wild and beautiful. She recognizes me the same way my wolf recognizes you. That's why you ran from me that first day. That's why you feel like you can't breathe when I'm too close. That's why your heart is racing right now." He was right about the last part, at least. Her pulse was thundering so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Could probably smell the adrenaline and fear and want coursing through her veins. "Even if that's true," she said desperately, "it doesn't change anything. I'm still mine." The word came out rough, possessive, and she felt something deep in her chest respond to it like a tuning fork. "You're mine, and I'm yours, and nothing else matters. Everything else matters. Your crown, your kingdom, your people. Will be stronger with you beside me." His forehead touched hers, and she felt his breath against her lips, warm and alive and real. "I've been alone my entire life, Elara. Isolated by my position, by expectations, by duty. But when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human." Tears were streaming down her face now, though she wasn't sure when they'd started. "I'm so scared." "Of what?" "Of wanting this too much. Of not being enough. Of destroying you just by loving you." His hands tightened on her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "Say that again." "Say what?" "The part about loving me." She closed her eyes, but there was no hiding from this anymore. No running from the truth that had been building between them since that first collision in the ballroom. "I love you," she whispered. "I've loved you since the moment I crashed into you and you caught me. And it's been terrifying every second since." When she opened her eyes, he was smiling. The first real, unguarded smile she'd ever seen from him. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger. Human. "There she is," he murmured. "My brave girl." "I'm not brave. I was running away. You're the bravest person I know." His thumb traced her lower lip and she shivered. "You faced down Vivienne's threats. You tried to protect me even when it meant denying your own feelings. You're trying to protect me now by leaving." His touch was making it hard to think. Hard to remember all the reasons this was impossible. "But I don't need protecting, love," he continued, and the endearment nearly broke her. "I need you. Just you, exactly as you are. Darius, marry me." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect and terrifying. "You can't just, I can do anything I want. I'm the king." There was humor in his voice now, warmth that made her chest ache with longing. "And what I want is you. As my mate, my queen, my partner in everything. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep, holding you every night. I want to face whatever comes next with you beside me. The nobles will revolt. Let them try. Other kingdoms will see it as weakness. They'll see it as strength when they meet their new queen and realize what they're dealing with. Despite everything, the fear, the impossibility of it all, she almost smiled at that. You have a lot of faith in someone who's never been further than the castle walls. I have faith in the woman who's been taking care of everyone around her since she was 15, the woman who puts duty above her own safety, the woman who tried to sacrifice her happiness for mine." He leaned closer until their lips were almost touching, until she could taste his breath. "I have faith in my mate." Something was stirring inside her chest, something warm and wild and unfamiliar. It felt like waking up after a long, dreamless sleep, like stretching muscles she'd never used before. "Is that her?" she whispered. "My wolf?" "Hello, beautiful," he murmured, and she felt his wolf in his voice, deeper and rougher than usual, with an undertone of pure contentment. "It's about time." The sensation was overwhelming, like finding a part of herself she hadn't known was missing. Her wolf was there, had always been there, just waiting for this moment. This recognition. "I can feel her," she breathed in wonder. "She's perfect, just like the rest of you." Elara looked up at him, this impossible man who'd thrown away a kingdom for her, and felt the last of her walls crumble. He was right. They were mates. The bond thrummed between them like a living thing, undeniable and absolute. She made her choice. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to what?" "To all of it. To you, to this, to whatever comes next." She reached up to frame his face with her hands, marveling at her right to touch him freely. "To being your queen." His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm sure. That's all I need." And then he was kissing her. Soft and gentle at first, then deeper when she responded. It felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure all at once. Her wolf practically purred with contentment, while her human heart raced with joy and fear and love, so intense it bordered on pain. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers again. "No more running," he said. "No more running," she agreed. Then, because she needed something to ground her in the face of such enormous change, "But I still don't know how to be a queen." "Then it's lucky you'll have the rest of our lives to learn." He pressed a soft kiss to the tip of her nose. "And I'll be there for all of it." She thought about her tiny room, her simple life, the certainty she'd had just hours ago about who she was and where she belonged. All of it was gone now, replaced by something vast and terrifying and wonderful. "I'm going to need a bigger closet," she said. His laugh was rich and warm and full of promise. "I think we can arrange that." Outside, she could hear the castle still buzzing with activity. Nobles and servants alike trying to process what had happened in the throne room. There would be challenges ahead, political storms to weather, traditions to navigate, enemies to face. But standing there in his arms, his wolf calling to hers, their bond settling into place like the final piece of a puzzle. Elara found she wasn't afraid anymore. They would face whatever came next together. As mates. As partners. As two souls who had found their home in each other. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I hope you enjoyed this story of love conquering all obstacles. If you'd like to hear more romance stories like this one, please like and subscribe.